My next patron question is from Graham, who wants to know my thoughts on a studio's specific take on a famous story. Disney has made 3 adaptations of The Jungle Book, and none of them have been faithful. During the production of the first film in the 1960s, Walt Disney infamously told his staff not to adapt the original. The 1994 film by Stephen Sommers was really just an adaptation of Tarzan with the Jungle Book title slapped on it, and the recent 2016 film by Jon Favreau was a live-action remake of the 1967 film. Why won't Disney produce a faithful adaptation of The Jungle Book? Honestly, Disney is a very interesting studio when it comes to adaptations, as more often than not, faithfulness is not necessarily the main priority when translating stories to the screen. Walt Disney himself was keen on the films he produced having a specific stamp to them, and making any changes he felt was necessary in making it work as a movie. This included The Jungle Book, which originally began development as something darker and closer to the book in a treatment written by Bill Peet. Although even before Walt made his decree that the film depart from the book, Peet had already made his own alterations that would end up in the finished film, like the character of King Louie and Baloo's goofier personality. The thing with the Disney animated movies is they have a way of replacing the original stories in the public consciousness. So to many people who grew up watching Disney's animated Jungle Book, this is how they remember the story. Same goes for a lot of the other adaptations, with a lot of people being more aware of Bambi, The Little Mermaid, and 101 Dalmatians from how they're depicted in the animated films rather than the original books. That's a hold Disney has on popular culture. This even applies to some of the live-action movies too. How many people who've seen The Parent Trap are familiar with the original German source material, The Double Lottie? Probably very few. Whenever Disney themselves return to a story they've previously adapted, they very often borrow from the film they produce rather than dig back into the initial story. 101 Dalmatians is an interesting example of this, as every version since the animated film is borrowed from that instead of Dodie Smith's book. When I read the book a few years ago as research for my video on Cruella de Vil, I found out Perdita was a different Dalmatian and not Pongo's wife, and that Cruella was married, things that were altered for the film adaptation. Cruella, being a fashion designer, was added for the live-action remake in 1996, and that has become a mainstay of the character ever since. Even when I was a child, I knew Disney altered things from the story, and so I'm never surprised when they do these changes. Back to The Jungle Book, Stephen Sommers was not particularly interested in making a faithful adaptation when he signed on to direct his version. He mainly wanted to use the setting and characters to create an adventure yarn like the ones he enjoyed growing up. This is, after all, the same filmmaker who decided to turn The Mummy from a horror movie to something more akin to Indiana Jones. Jon Favreau's version is in line with the current trend of Disney remakes that use the animated films as the main source. So we get the songs, the similar dynamic between Mowgli and Baloo, and the character of King Louie. The movie even opens with the exact same musical cue that begins the animated film. Even in cases like Cinderella and Mulan, where the filmmakers don't follow the exact template from the animated films and try going their own way, they use a few of the same character names and include a few songs in the score or the end credits. Although it does feel like Disney cannot win with these remakes. People either complain that they're too similar, with many questioning what the point is, or they're upset when elements are altered from the animated films, like when people complained there was not a wisecracking dragon in Mulan. I even remember before the recent live-action version of Peter Pan was released on Disney+, a couple photos from a book tie-in were leaked on the internet, and a few folks online said that the Lost Boys winding up in London at the end was insipid. Yeah, what hack writer came up with that ending? Apparently it was someone named J.M. Barrie. How dare he insult the original creator like that? But when it comes to a more faithful adaptation of The Jungle Book, I don't think you're likely to see one from Disney. Any filmmaker coming in to direct an adaptation of a story they've done before appears to be required to use at least a few elements from the earlier adaptation. From what I understand, the Jungle Book adaptation Andy Serkis directed a while back was considered closer to the tone and feel of Kipling's stories. Chuck Jones also made a couple of animated specials that are supposedly closer to the original text. These might be more what you're looking for. Thank you for your question, Graham.